고보 두제체디마 탐제진바도 바보 스나네 대지직로 사 절로 딱 봐도 찾아가게 교회에 살아라 이제 계속도 저기 이제 저 출라사 절로 돌려도 가려고 라바다라도 그 생각 나봐야 되지 gen들어야 상사로 도저히 저기 살려나가다 봐봐 내가 치료하고 뭐도 가져 너무 가줄로만 남라서 와데 오늘 지게 이제 보라네 그래서 가지고 그냥 거니 라센 축구 무슨 도대 봐다가는 저러서 와데 어서도 하더라 초진치 냐 처음에 보셔 질러서 생기도 되는데 단치나 다봐 출지도 또 그래도 지상에 왔다고요. kapastortu soppe. Mbaang rumechike. Mabachon sel so tesera sensa kajike. Kapasap. Digmani se. 그렇다 통과해야 되니. 생대식인 목광 뭐 통솔을 되니. 나한테는 이제 소고소고 빼대래. 그래서 산지 통거요래. 얘는 가시가 통거용 요래. 성내로 떴고요래. 땅에 탕을 통산 저렇게 들어오기 때문이야. 샘 니들과 왕도 땅을 레서를 빌려요 말이야. 통화돼 되는 통을 광고서 계속 통을 광고를 사고 하세요. 광고 지체에 봐 되는 게 되는들이 님 만나서 저 레바산 되니 문에서 그때그때 사지 토야야 돼. 되니 세군내로 또 가라 들으면 집었다 직접 봐서 직접 봐도 말 살아야지. 살때 저기 타마바는 알아들이 사지고 덕차려고 사톱차에 대다는 이들이 대신지 못한다. 근데 사지에서 레버래. 사지에서라. 양양짤 무슨 출고요래. 세고양 타고요래. 양양짤 이지는 출고요래. 대외에 준체매 봐. 통화대 공부를 해서 그 받아들는 말이 해서.
So just before we really stopped at a very good point on page 22, where it said the darkness of 1,000 aeons is dispelled by the light of a single lamp. Likewise, the luminous clarity of mind instantly dispels negativities and obscurations amassed over eons. So when you see the nature of mind, the essence of your own Buddha nature, then it is just like in this example here, and you actually see the Buddha. So some people actually see the nature of mind, but then often they feel like that is enough. They feel like, oh, now I have seen it, and they feel that they have like all realized it already. But the problem is that even though we have seen it, it can also happen that very quickly, again, we become controlled by our dualistic grasping. And again, we accumulate karma. And then what we have seen is of not so much benefit. Lord Chigten Somgyön had said that once you have seen it, it also must be habituated. So habituation is really crucial. That is to sustain the nature of mind, awareness of that continuously. If you really do not create any more karma with afflictions and thoughts in your mind, then you really actually can be enlightened in just an instant. In terms of realizing the nature of mind, it is said that there's two kinds of individuals. There is those who realize the nature of mind gradually, and then others who realize it instantly, very quickly. Those who realize it instantly, it is just like they are sitting on the ground, so they are like ordinary, and then it's like standing up, like getting up from sitting, and in that instant, that quickly, they already realize the nature of the mind, or they attain bhumi or enlightenment. So if you are not again confused, then you really have arrived at the state of enlightenment. But then it is mostly the case that we do see the nature of mind, but then again we become confused. So it is essential, therefore, to habituate through practice the nature that we have seen.
Tata jivande ashir otati dunge yorte dekware de la yore de mulekina de jivande tla manu parati nata dunge senjoa jaga no basa zabulling de dunge tamti manu jo thol dak no na chaba chaba na je dak no yore de kari le songa ise de jabane songa re jaba kari le tena le jumje mashi shirap de langdor chubi shirap mene tata nyubo ba le sa chitapje o tanga kaga bo shede kolanga shedang chado ona de suha ko yo ma ya tashi de la peje ti de tati nyubo le so mang wa so min wo de ha ko ma chadde ma de drip de lo jo nyubo wa sa wa de sang sada 사도사이지 뭐 같이 하고는 힘어서 어디가 하고는 다 드바메 가를 드바메는 되게 뉴모가데 방에서 바로 먹고 놓았다나 제가 코로나 코로나다야 좀 말인가 코로나 좀래서 내가 진짜 봐요만 며칠 봐요만 되게 좋아하고 코스 갈지 나랑 그들이 제당 먹고 차도 먹고 사서 상마서 되게 봐요만 되게 드바메 레서 마음을 듣고 가요 말이에요. 그럼 자는 죽지 잡되는 몇 가지를 가요 놓아요 말이 자는 죽지는 고통 막 오는 좀만 하지 당대요 해 가시더니 소가 유지도 고통 마음을 하지 잡아 삼지 세로요 해 딜레레 다세랑 철레 같이 해요 말이 비트도 라지 뭐 동에 득 저는 대대우니까 드파레서 드바카레다 뉴모 같은 자이바 하고 요 말이 제 속하고 되들 드바면은 되 다다한테 이 시바사오 되면 너무 하고 요래 되게 까빠르사고 만나사빠는 다도 마음으로 사케요 많이 가서 와가 가면 마디 장 심마디 dom도 요래서 다티 가래 오 마음을 다디 돌 다디 상 다디 이디 매가 차네 용마들이 레서 아웃이 요말 기바 그런 게 이모이 실은 전도 득득이 동티 하장 싸우려면 그 양도 좀 그래 대하고라들은 소소서 득레드 싸움사라는 래 다다님을 레서 어때만서 득거래서 항상 하고 그래 뒤득득 하고는 요거래
So this term here, negativities and obscurations, what that means is that so sometimes we think that it all refers to this common term, just it means suffering and negativity altogether, but there is a slight distinction. So negativity is something that comes back to you, that falls back upon you. And it comes from the obscuration. So the negativity is something that falls back to you, something that you dislike. For example, an illness or any other kind of suffering, a problem, or harm caused by the four elements. All the suffering in the world is what comes back to us as a result. It showers down like rain. But then how do we create this negativity? It comes from the obscurations. And obscuration means that one doesn't understand karma. One lacks the wisdom of knowing what to adopt and what to abandon. And without that clarity, one accumulates karma with an afflicted mind all the time. And one also deceives oneself, thinking that, and others, thinking that if I put on a pretense, then nothing bad is created. For example, I can say some nice things. Nobody really knows that I'm really angry and jealous, so I can just say hello to everyone and say nice things. But really, what I'm doing is accumulating negative karma. And that is what comes back in the future. So if you engage in an action with an afflicted mind, it will ripen in the future. And that is something that people don't know. So the root, the cause are the afflictive emotions. And unknowing of that, we continue to accumulate those afflictions in our mind. When mind is clear, then there will be no obscuration. Then you recognize that it is the affliction that causes harm. So for example, even if another person is hurting you, if you get angry at that person for hurting you, then if you have awareness, you would recognize that even though that person is hurting me, the real fault lies also in myself getting angry at that person. So no matter what the other person does, I will practice patience. I will not become controlled by anger and jealousy. I will purify my mind. So in that case, you do not become obscured. But then, if you become obscured, you will act out on the affliction, and that will come back to you in the future. For example, there is some in this world who have survived the world wars, the First and Second World War, unharmed, and some of them are still alive. And then there is others, like kings, for example, who have a lot of security and bodyguards, who still get assassinated. And that is their karma. If you have the karma to die, then there is nothing that you can do about it. And just naturally, suffering will come your way. That is this negativity that arises from the obscuration. And the obscuration is the affliction. And most people don't recognize that it is their own afflictions who is the real enemy. If awareness is clear, you recognize the affliction. And that is how, it said here, you're purifying aeons of negativities and negative karma. So you're purifying aeons of karma, and also you're not creating more for the future. As we mentioned yesterday during the empowerment, the previous karmas, the previous obscurations are being purified and are prevented from further arising in the future. So the previous karmas of dualistic grasping, self-grasping are cleared away. And in the future, since there's no more duality, there's also no one who accumulates negative karma. And the afflictions are transformed into wisdom. So this is a term that we really have to reflect on again and again, these obscurations and negativities. It is important to understand that very clearly. And then whether or not we act on it, whether or not we accumulate karma, that is up to us. But if we accumulate karma, then it will come back to us. And so that is an important point to understand.
罗宾结果多了么呢？那说，你罗宾吧是谁？你知道，我说，哪怕他这边对吧嘞，修人啊，这里知道，成熟起来没吧？成熟起来那个人，希望我把那个就来，咱们这啥呢？这东西那么他说，就他。咱们这嘛不用的，当然讲你现在讲苹果么都啥的成熟都差。 你我大地熟起来的嘞，你这种因为落熟冲多了嘞，大就不做起，这熟冲这起来为起来冲多了，起来冲了这主力冲，你卡萨干冲的，做因为落熟差了，这家里人熟差不要嘞，这落米吧，这成熟没法差的，这样没事了，总那么疼呐，这个那个的。 弄个那种十八岁了，说老民别叫，老民把家里，一瓶个老300米吧，等于1000米吧，多300米吧，就是这个年纪，那说这个要的，300，就是嘛，这个年纪的年纪2000吧都，年纪基本都差了点了要的，做300吨这个年纪全部要来的。
Then it says, if you are of lesser ability and cannot abide in this state, you should hold the key points of the winds and exert yourself in stabilizing awareness. So who is that of lesser ability? For example, someone has entered the Buddha Dharma. Even though we have entered the Buddha Dharma, often we do not have a lot of inner strength, mental strength, or confidence. And that is because in previous lives we have engaged in all kinds of actions, all kinds of karmas. And as a result of that, in this life we experience all sorts of different problems, and bigger and smaller problems. For example, you might think that even if I practice, there is no benefit. So you have no strength, no confidence that you can practice. And that is because self-grasping and the afflictions are very strong. And compassion and altruism are very weak. You're considering the self as most important, and then wisdom will be very weak. And when wisdom is not strong, then you will not be very diligent in practice. So the most important point is the altruistic mind. If you're losing the strength of the altruistic mind, then you're losing the strength in whatever you do. And that is what makes you one of lesser ability. Then you feel that you cannot abide in the practice, you cannot sustain the practice. And so for those, it says you should hold the key points of the winds and exert yourself in stabilizing awareness. And so that also actually begins, first of all, with cultivating immeasurable love and compassion. First, actually, immeasurable love. When love arises, then compassion will naturally arise. If love does not arise first, then even if some compassion arises, it will be again ordinary compassion. That is, that compassion quickly becomes tainted by attachment. So therefore, it is most important that when we cultivate compassion, that it is actually founded on immeasurable love.
Pada long pam ji zong kapo yore shi yo ma de lang ba long shi ba de ji su go yang song che ba jin yore long men zhe ba lo ban yo ban ne song long song go yong song du de men jin ba yang song du da ka le go kapo yore ka le ngune ge long de le shi ge long de ra ge seng de ba na de yore ga se tong mo de le shok tong na ni ka na long ma ti be de de wa long 공가 잡아서 좋아래 거요래 근데 하거나 진짜 되는 거죠 루들리가 돼서 제걸 속소데 대화를 속는 거요래 잡을리를 자 상태 속의 대화를 들는데 생사오 당치하는 차한걸로 대화라 하서는 근데 또 몰라서 건 내나 내가 같이 당고지 속는 것들이 롱라기 그 대화를 내 발롱송 이 시기를 넘어서 거요래 이렇게 다음에 시기를 넘어했더니 다 같이 장모시 남남교들 나서 봐서 그때 남남교들 이사에 타블란타 콜라니 콜라들 로로 이제 또 같이 장모지나 근데 뭐 속좀 될 롱데 이 말에 해서
And so then here it says one should hold the key points of the winds. That is also related to the practice of the channels, winds, and drops. And so the most important point here is the key point is to hold the winds at the navel. Because at the navel there is the entrance to the central channel. And if the mind abides at the navel, then the wind mind will enter into the central channel. And so then also in the teachings, it is explained that in the context of this practice, one should hold the vase breath. But that is actually very difficult for most people to do. And therefore, Lord Jigten Sumgyen actually gave special instructions about the wind practice. And that is the kind of the medium or like the gentle holding of the wind, the natural holding of the wind, where he says that the key point of the winds is to allow them to be retained in a natural state, a loose state. And so then you might still wonder then why are we even talking about holding winds if there is not really any holding and it's just natural. It's maybe hard to understand. So first of all, what is meant with wind here is not the outer wind or the air that we are breathing, but it is the mind wind, the wind energy, the wisdom wind, that it is the quality of awareness, of clear awareness. And so how the energy of wind comes to the navel in a natural way is that when you are straightening your lower back, then naturally you feel there is a sensation coming to the navel. When you're straightening your lower back, then instantly there's an energy coming to the navel. It feels like an egg or something. A feeling arises there. And that feeling must be recognized. And it's actually that wind held at the navel, that this wind energy held at the navel, that gives the quality to various sports, even in a mundane sense. All kinds of like athletic things that people are able to do comes really from holding the wind energy at the navel. Because when the wind is at the navel, then the body and the mind are very clear and you will not feel tired. So now here we are holding the winds at the navel when we practice Tumo, for example. So you're straightening your lower back and the winds naturally come to the navel. So this is this natural holding of the wind, of wisdom winds. And then in the instructions, often also it mentions the 7-point posture of Arochana and so on. But since we are now here in the practice also of the path of liberation, so we have said there is skillful, a path of skillful means and a path of liberation. And so these practices here now belong to the path of liberation. So here we can, in a Mahamudra context now, and so here we can sit in a more relaxed way. The only crucial point of the body is the straight back. So you're straightening your lower back and just have the wind energy naturally come to the navel. And then it says you should stabilize awareness. And so actually it literally says first you focus awareness and then you let it loose. And so the focusing is similar to, for example, when you're shooting an arrow or you're shooting a gun, there's a focus, or especially when you shoot an arrow, there's this focus where you're tightening your muscle and you're focusing on the target single-pointedly. And actually you're also using the focus through the wind energies, holding the wind energies. So not on the outer level, the outer air, but it is the clear awareness, the concentrated mind. So the mind is very focused and concentrated, very clear. And then once it is very clear, then you release the mind within that clarity. So you're not always remaining in this tight state, but once you're already very clear, then you can send the mind, allow the mind to settle in a more natural state. So actually this term in Tibetan, it has many meanings according to the dictionary, but probably that is what it refers to. It is the first, the focus of awareness, and then the release within that focus.
따당당의 생진에서 많이 해서 따당들이 다가시 다음 메가다당 메가다당들 맥전나가 따나가 제가 따나가 내 살았다나가 들이 샘 배너성복 지나들이 제가 당으로 따이 그때 양 생생고랑 이 살았다 다시 내 거지 됐다당 제발 요래 내가 더 나랑 그 샘도 가리데 데이터도 샘도 사고 가리데 소속을 배주도 따당성 내가 지금 좀 되나 맥좀 돼요 생기대 맥 말아 배 뭐도 배자면서 맥좀 따야요 맥좀은 가관한테 때되면 사만년도 통되어라 저러 연구요래 같이 맥좀도 직접 타고요 말때 말이 그래서 말하면 잡을린 타고요 때 그래 맥좀 돼지 되는 생겨서 서로 따당을 희바사오 되는 따당서 어디 장부를 보여를 받더니 야 메디카운도 참아 요 마사메 마사들이 할때 야 제가 다 장왔다 들이자도 집에 가다 너 샘티지 그 밤에 봐내 탑칼을 가서 에 따당지 먹게 따당을
Then it says, through various gazes and methods of focusing the mind, persevere until you abide in awareness. So these gazes here. So gaze is, for example, some see it as something that we do with our eyes, a way of gazing with our eyes. And then people, especially in the context of shamatha practice, of calm abiding, we speak about it really in terms of eyes. Like, some people like to meditate with their eyes closed, and some like to have their eyes open, and sometimes we look more up and straight ahead, and sometimes more down, close by. Also depending on the state of our mind, when you feel you lose your clarity and you feel sleepy, then you might want to raise your gaze and directly look out into the sky. And sometimes when you feel restless and there are many thoughts, then you might want to lower your gaze and look more down. So in the shamatha instructions, we are instructed to practice according to our own mental state, whatever works the best for us. And then, however, there's another way of gazing, and that is actually not with the eyes. It is a mind gazing. Sometimes even when you have your eyes closed, you're still actually looking, but you're looking with your mind and you're still seeing. That is also what Milarepa had explained. He said, like with closed eyes, you look into like the far distance of the sky, and you see everything. It's not like you don't see anything. And people think that now when you close your eyes, then you don't see anything. But that is actually not true. You see with the mind's eye. For example, when you're dreaming, you also have your eyes closed, but you're still seeing all kinds of things. It is your mind seeing it. It is your clear awareness seeing it. So it is the clear awareness, the eye of the clear awareness. And for example, now when you're in this room, and first you gaze out, and then you might even close your eyes, and then there's no more thought of there is people or there is no people here, although you see everyone, but there is no thought of there being or not being anyone. You just directly gaze without a focus on anyone in particular, just you gaze into this openness where everything is kind of encompassed by the gaze in its totality with no specific focus. So it is like a gazing out into the sky without any grasping. That's also a method for the mind to abide. And then there's also the gaze with the eyes.
내들을 빠지 우리들이 되게 나도 오지서 말하고 대토를 바람 턱턱 거래 실브라 척 마셔 와서 라서 코들 나도 같은 잡아셔구나 이 샘때 대체 왕도 소용을 배나 그래서 자제로를 잡아도 용가 가랭이 나더니 내가 갖다 동에 가서 저도 서로 나더니 심 나도 소소 마셔봐 그럼 장이 나도 소소 마셔봐서 그래서 내리 따라 나도 장이 가랭이 샤나는 거 내가 고샤를 내도고요 대방하는 내 따뜻해 만일 생각 좋았대요고요 들리랑 나산 드라마들 겁잡고라들이 만나서 나 서로 따뜻해 루게다는 쇼를 들이 공나베데 개만이 이제 고트에서는 서버탄들이 직접 선택지가 대다들이 루서 나사오나 맞춰가 차용을 대세 대로 서와가 말하더니 관광놈이 받겠어
So to persevere until you abide in awareness, and is to first you establish single-pointedness, where you see awareness, and then you habituate it, you continue to abide within it until awareness has reached stability. And that means that you do not become controlled by any thoughts or feelings that arise. And that is what is called clear awareness, having attained stability and not losing the stability of clear awareness. Losing the stability means that you begin to grasp at the thoughts that arise. You become controlled by those thoughts. And those thoughts arise in dependence on any of the 5 sense objects. When you see a form or sound, smell, touch, and so on, any pleasurable or painful sensation, whatever arises, you become controlled by it. You think about it. So the thought arises and you think about it. So that is when you become controlled. And when awareness has attained stability, even if those thoughts arise, positive or negative thoughts, you will not become controlled by them. Actually, it is a sign of abiding within awareness is that whatever arises will not negatively affect you in any way. You will still be able to sustain awareness at all times. And a sign that you're not abiding in awareness is that you begin to grasp. And all kinds of feelings then arise when you grasp in your mind. All kinds of feelings in your mind arise and also in your body. For example, when you're meditating, then you could, your mind could become controlled by your body. So you lose your mind to your body and then you feel pain, and even pain that was not there before. So there's different kinds of methods to practice with sensations. For example, there is those like 8 kinds of close placement meditation, like the close placement of feelings and so on, where we become aware of those sensations and feelings of pain and so forth.
No, since the time, semi over time, much or Tata, Tata goes the Jana, which is not so easily. Young not to conscious of the group of the team, something shoulder tree, semi agita and Royal the 3 child or there are coming now I seem to touch you, just now that around the same learning so human so for them, they were teaching. Oh, so no, the home, same could miss you. Making dictating comes to Sanuna, dictating the Tantu Lake, not good something comes out with the Zu Yapatan, the Zera, the Tapong Mataba, Doctor Governor Sagan Mataba. Zonki Sem Satan, Tassam Nero, the dinner, the Sem Napato Tonatini, Zonki the Zodinila, the young tongue, the Taket, the long Taket, the David, the Semar Paraso, young Turbo. Tito Bajitis over soon, Tim, some of Tony Donos, Kachi, Semari, Gawajaki, doesn't mean my age, Maris, Semar one nation, Sema, was going to go out there, Sema, the Garchen, oh, Sema, that many Sema, Zin, do you want to just our Tagli, dinner. To do dodging in Zin Chok, to the one Zin Chok, that Zin Ziraki on my little Marat Saturday, that Potacho, oh, 이제 매와 저런 게 다든 저것도 다가서니 들로자 짜는 저 매와 하고를 이제 받다 쳐봐봐 이 하고 듣고 요래 따로 양 가실 것 같아도 그래 먹었다 땅을 따봤다 땅 대양 제발 요래.
And then actually there's also kind of a gaze from the perspective of the view. And so now we have said that first we need to resolve that appearances are mind, and then that mind itself is emptiness. So if we have not resolved that, then even though we might be practitioners, we meditate, and maybe even during our meditation we are able to let go of all kinds of thoughts, but once we are out of meditation, then all kinds of thoughts and feelings arise again, and just like before, we become controlled by them, and we believe in their truth, and we hold on to our ideas about them. And in that way, our mind, despite our practice, actually never improves in practice. And the reason really is because we have not resolved that appearances are mind. In the 37 practices, it says in the verse that explains the ultimate truth, appearances are one's own mind. So first there is the mind, and the mind creates the person, and the person creates the world, the universe. The world is created by the collective karmas of all the beings, and then the different kind of beings in the world are created by their own personal karmas. And whatever is created, all of that is impermanent. It is a compound, like an aggregate of many things, and in the end will become dispersed. This entire world is of impermanent nature. And then when you look at the one who has created all of that, your own mind, then when you see the mind, it becomes like space. And when you look at that mind, this concept of there being a creator and something created all disappears. So first we investigate the nature of the mind in that way. There is the method to resolve that view, the nature of the mind, according to the logical reasoning or valid cognition or pramana. And in there it is that you have to establish that or reflect on that in this way over and over again. And Lord Jigten Sumgön actually explained this valid cognition, and he said that the ultimate fruition of valid cognition is the profound truth of emptiness. And so some refute actually this teaching on valid cognition, this reasoning, and they say that's actually not really practice. But that really is not true, because there is something like the ultimate valid cognition, like the most valid of cognitions, and that is that there is nothing to be found. So that is the most valid cognition. So if there would be a self and another to be found, then one can hold on to that. But no matter how much one tries to find that, it cannot be found anywhere. And through this lack of finding, one then resolves the view according to that particular approach. So there is nothing to be found, and then finally you realize that actually I'm only grasping at and believing in a self that can actually not be found anywhere. And then in that way you're able to let go of such grasping. So this is how some understand the view also. So in terms of gaze, we can also see it as like a viewing of the mind.
다 남카라 리케다 남카들 니 다다도 섬인지 요래 다니 요래 근데 다다나 벌써 손들이 나서세 자기 요래 근데 다니 통 때는 다 남카리 제가 섬인 남카 남카 이래시 그러니까래 리지 남카 남카 코는 닝내마다 근데 semkono 설딱지다 파나카리 장다가 딱지당 그리고 저기 시바살람소 당이 semkono 남카나지래서 드니 가다라는 거 근데 딱지당 때랑 딱지당 다 적들이 카카리스 다 퐁도래 그네 야나서 그 셈이 시고야 셈 셈이 자차자치 빠르지 하고도 셈이 님매가 레다 유목 타데요 셈이 시작해 좀 하고서 전나 들이 이제 들으면은 들이 될 셈아데 에 셈이라서 뭐 돈이 동서 말을 해서 말이 그 참아도 셈만 에비시라 신 셈아데 신 셈아 이런 문에 셈아데 셈이 다 월다고 강리 용이 딱히 타비 잘해 나와서 딱보람지 타답차와 남카사와 제바람지 타답매와 사라들이 사동 남카사와 이렇게 도지 창을 들제시 양매바 나보다 같은 좋고요래 데이터를 타답으로도 대저 sem처럼 타다 남도 총과 sem전하지 통다 다 sem코는 미지다 사동 남카사를 이렇게 좀 하자 되어 치고 되어 되는 보절매가 장매가 그냥 대답을 좋아하게 들게 여대한테 가리고 들고 그래서 남도 총과 sem전하지 통서
Then when you look into the middle of the sky, fixed concepts of center and boundary will cease. So when you look into, so here we are looking at the nature of the clear awareness that recognizes our thoughts. So when you look at your mind, sustaining awareness, there's a time when all thoughts have ceased and no future thoughts have yet arisen. And sometimes there is a very small, short space between those thoughts. And when you are aware of this space between thoughts, it becomes like the vast sky, completely empty, but also clear. You also know, you are fully aware of this space. It is aware of itself. So you are aware that my mind is like space. There's no separation between my mind and space. And then that you train in, you habituate over and over again. And finally, you will actually experience how your own mind and the space are actually indivisible. So that is, first you look at mind, looks at mind, and without grasping at self and other. So now first, in the beginning, we do see a duality of self and other. It is just like when you make those, with your fingers, you make those two holes, so you have two. So what you really see is two. But then when you open the fingers like this, it all merges into one. And there is no more two within space. So in this way, you should examine the mind like space again and again. So sustaining clear awareness. And sometimes there is this feeling of, oh, my mind is like space. There's a knowing awareness. For example, you can train your mind by looking at yourself and one friend. So you look at yourself and your friend, and you recognize that we are separate when it comes to our bodies. There's two separate bodies. And the body, by nature, is we're composed of different aggregates, and in the end will turn into ash. And then you might think, I want to know my friend's mind. So then you can be certain that your mind and your friend's mind are exactly the same. They're actually non-dual. There's only a difference in your karmas and afflictions in the mind, but the basis of the mind is the same. And if you understand that, you will not grasp at a duality. And so that is this ultimate valid cognition, that is the seeing of the profound truth of emptiness. Or also Milarepa had said that I have not learned in all of the teachings of valid cognition and so on, but I've realized my own mind, the valid cognition of my own mind. According to the middle way, the Madhyamaka view, the Buddhist view is explained as being free from the four extremes, free from existence and non-existence. And when you realize the mind, it becomes clear and empty. And that is the specialty of the Buddha's teaching, of the Buddhist view, because the fault of eternalism is cleared away by the empty space-like nature, and the fault of nihilism is cleared away by the natural clarity of the mind. And this nature that is clear and empty is also represented by the Buddha Vajradhara, who represents a nature that is clear, empty, and beyond birth and death. That is the Buddhist view of the mind. And so when you now directly look at your mind, there is an awareness that clear knowing awareness that recognizes everything that arises. So there might be just a moment of recognition where you just know that is the nature of my mind. It is like empty space and you're very clear. And in that moment where you see that, there is an experience of very profound bliss. And that bliss is unchanging. And it is beyond decline, without decline. So that is what you feel for even just a moment, but then you must habituate to that moment again and again.
So, this also civil Namkaya Wala, Namsort and Madinas, then Namsort and sort of so. The Nathan Central is on Tadaso, Tumakan Namkan Javari, that is Chapape or Kami Petri or Namkan Javari, some we already. Then another than a summer. Still Saturn in Rodimini, Namkan Javastari, Yamari Persian. Then I get any. Some corner ranchitera took topsometry, and I thought about it. Lapsang so, Chotan lapta, not the Tribata, so, Madapa, the day Tomani is. The Toya, maybe didn't say to me, but just Tomani is. Madapas, the so. Tata Mevara, young level, Lapata, New York, some killer. That the days and Madapa. Tajamata, the Bedma, Shefiore, Donatore, Nato Batavere, Ransenton, we are top of Balate. So there are several Nato Sharon Kami, Nato Sharon, Nato Sharon, Kari, the Taki Maton, the Sangra, she saw what the Nato race, security, she must saw what the last of them, Japota, they were Japota there. Il porta emozioni ancora, non voglio amare il cuore, che stavo mangiando lì, non tutti segui, sciapo tutti, che non tutti scioppi facciano, di Gesù Nama, non tutti trovati, non tutti scioppi facciano,
And so likewise the waves of thoughts arise in the mind, rising in the mind subside when mind sees itself. So when mind sees itself, the mind is like space, like the sky, and the thoughts are like clouds. Chigden Somgen also said, do not grasp at the clouds of conceptual thoughts that are within the vast expanse of mind itself. So when we don't recognize the clouds, then from our perspective it may seem that the clouds are the sky, and then it rains and so on, and it sometimes creates difficulties for us and the weather. So we basically say that the sky are the clouds. They're the same. But once you have traveled in an airplane, you know that the clouds are separated from the sky, because you can travel in the sky above the clouds. So there's no connection between them at all. So when awareness attains stability, then all those thoughts become like that. They come and they go, like clouds in the sky or like waves on water. And whatever arises is impermanent and compounded, and therefore it is empty. There's nothing that can actually be found to truly exist, and therefore it is empty. So everything that you see is impermanent and just a compound of many parts. And it's not here right now, but the next moment something arises, just like a cloud in the sky. Therefore, whatever arises is like an illusion. There's many examples, like the cloud, the wave, and so on. And so when mind sees itself now, is that, first you look at the mind. Mind looks at itself, and then a thought arises within the mind as you look at your mind, and then you don't follow that thought. You don't think that about this or that, but there is still a clear awareness that knows that there is a thought. So you recognize it, but you do not begin to think about it. You don't examine that thought. You just know that something arises. And in that way, when awareness holds with stability, you become like a king. And then all of the activity around just seems like children playing, for example. You don't really think it is all real, really existing. And so that is the power of your awareness. It is the mind, the waves of thoughts arising in the mind subside. The subsiding power here comes from awareness. And that is, if awareness is very powerful, then thoughts lose their power. And that, in that way, thoughts come to an end.
사적처럼 돼서 왜 조지 쭉마다 라게 용띠마다 송을 사적처럼 천. 다 강이들 조되게 나가 줄래가 하고 내지 나한테 치고 차야 돼요. 이 조되게 직접 나오나? 오. 내가 참은 내지 다들 그 나이 뭘 동료로도 띵님도 저는 조려요 말이에요. 그 나한테 그 뉴모 잡다니 뭐지 나한테 요리들이 뭐도 좋다 요나에 대회는 이비로 올리지나 다지니 싫어 요말 어 뉴모가 듣고 좋고 뉴모가 그 공들나 저 누구 따오나 저 세상들 따오나 세상 찍고서나 저 세상으로 문제 듣고 요래 다 나디로 코게 알아, 제 나한테 딱 그걸 듣고 따서다. 딱 가리는 데서 듣고 요면 때 나한테 뉴모가 던지 잡자리. 뉴모가 적지 잡다 단지리. 때 뉴모가 잡아 단지서. 그 저들이 인피를 놓고는 이 되게 찍었더니 뉴모가 싫어하고 쫄라고. 저들이 도닥대 막 통라고. 그래서 시작을 차대에 단지지 떠먹거나지. 떠먹고 단지 제가 싸워요. 뭐 떠먹고 타고 단지 이제 하고는 대인이 뭐라더니 사자치고 고발라. 되니 인피글로 제치고 대 뉴모터로 섭제돼 인피글로 매너들이 하고는 좋고요. 말이
And so there are some practitioners who say that they actually practice and they actually even recognize their afflictions, the afflictive emotions. Even though they recognize all that, they still can't let go of them. They can't liberate them. And so the reason for that is that it is because their practice is not based or founded on bodhicitta. So we must first of all establish a foundation of immeasurable love. Otherwise, if we do not establish that foundation of love, then we will always consider ourselves as most important. For example, between two friends. Actually, it is said sort of like a law, the law of the bodhisattvas. The rule of the bodhisattvas is, the basic rule of bodhisattvas is you should never look at the faults of your companions, and you should never look at your own good qualities. And if we don't do that, then we can't let go of our afflictions. For example, between two friends, you might think that I'm the one who is doing everything, I'm doing all the work, so you think you become so great. And then if the other person says anything at all, then you feel offended and you think, but I did all of this. And then you just see the other person's fault. And this is why you cannot get rid of your afflictive emotions, because of the I, the self, being the foundation. And once there is the I, the self will always back up the afflictions. It will support the afflictions. It will justify the afflictions. And that is why you can never actually let go of the afflictions or liberate them. And if you have an altruistic mind, then there is not much thought of self and other. Then all you really see is the afflictive emotion. When someone hurts you, for example, first you get angry, and then you see your own anger and recognize that's my true enemy, is my own anger. And if you cannot see that, if you grasp at the self, then you will feel offended and you will say, he did that to me. And then you will not be able to be patient with anything. You cannot endure anything at all because of that I. And that I, that self-grasping, is the supportum of all the afflictions. It's the root of all the afflictions. And so therefore, if you only cultivate first an altruistic mind and then meditate, it is actually rather easy to let go of the afflictions, and therefore also easy then to see the ultimate truth. And that is because your mind has become a wisdom mind. And otherwise, even if you practice, if you grasp at the self, the mind is ignorant. Actually, ignorance and self-grasping are really one and the same thing. Self-grasping is really the ultimate ignorance. So when we practice Mahamudra, it should be practiced on the basis of an altruistic mind. And so that is why often people find that even though they practice and even though they recognize their own afflictions, they still cannot liberate them. And so amongst the many different afflictions in our mind, the most harmful one is that of anger or hatred. And so first we must recognize it, recognize the fault, and then remember that fault again and again. it is because of that fault of anger that right now we are separating from our friends. And also later on, it robs us of all our happiness. We will never find happiness in our life. Even if you are as wealthy as the gods, if you're always angry and jealous at your friend, you will never be happy. And that is what has created all the suffering in this world. For example, when we fight for our country, it is because of anger. And now, for example, between friends, if we get angry at each other about almost anything, any little condition, anything that happens makes us angry. So first we have to recognize the fault in the anger. And then actually when you recognize it, the person who makes you angry actually becomes like a doctor, like a physician that helps you bring it up. Because the anger was there hidden, but then it comes up through the trigger, and now you're able to recognize the anger as your real enemy. And that is really a sign that you are really actually practicing the 37 Bodhisattva practices. In there it says, in terms of patience, it says, to all those who desire the treasures of virtue, all those who do harm are like a precious treasure, or like a doctor who help you. So then, for example, when you lose all your wealth to someone, then you would think that now I have repaid my karmic creditor, my karmic debt. Or if you fall ill or are hurt, have pain, then you will think that now I'm purifying my obscurations. Then you will be able to transform any kind of difficulty into happiness. So it is through the practice of the twofold bodhicitta. On the relative level, you will be able to make everything a practice of the 6 paramitas. And on the ultimate level, through the view, you will be able to equalize everything, good and bad. Everything becomes the same. And that must be founded on the relative bodhicitta. When you base your practice on relative bodhicitta, then it will be very easy, very, very helpful for you to easily liberate your afflictive emotions.
Penna nakwa khado yebde ta semnede nakwa tawre nakwa khado yebde na karnataka kumi jawami te yana se khado yebde kete karna chi jo kumi jo indi sem nakwa tawre tela mgiwa yumo bachena te shiktoto hore Tomagere, Capo Givere, la Penta, Upo, Tata, Upo, the Semarakinet, Sentita, Udino, Mari, Sentita, Sabata, and the Tony on the Sajis and Gigi, Mari, Gigi Tombagere, Tombagis and he just won't do by and Bethany, so give us, give us your. Dadis and Shetan, Magia, Kodokami, the Tata said, when he should give I am better for get a Kanachi of Kumajers of Hong, there is more than July or marriage. Usually for Tapa.
Then it says, as space transcends color and form, it is changeless and not tinted black or white. So too, your own mind is beyond color and form, unstained by the light and dark phenomena of good and evil. So the mind, the actual nature of mind is like space, or like the sky. And then, now here in this context, we must be able to liberate whatever affliction and negative thought arises. And now, if you have already liberated all of these thoughts and you have developed a state of emptiness and compassion, so then you realize that all sentient beings who do grasp at the concrete reality and the ideas in their mind about those things that appear to them, all of these sentient beings don't actually exist inherently. But you cultivate, there arises a mind of compassion for them. So a Buddha has realized there is no duality between themselves and sentient beings. And that compassion that arises from emptiness. It is the unity of emptiness and compassion. And then from the perspective of that state, there is no distinction between virtues and non-virtues and so forth anymore. On the relative level, of course, we say that compassion is a virtuous thought, and self-grasping and anger is a non-virtuous thought. But then now from that perspective, on the ultimate level, now when you look at the actual space-like nature of the mind, then that essence is always unchanging and never affected by anything that arises. It never is affected by virtues and non-virtuous thoughts. So what this is explaining is that the actual basis of the mind is by nature pure.
해당 지네 해당대 메인에 메롱다위시네 뉴모바 쾅이시네 저저요래 이 기와던 기와니 각하요 말이 이제 생파런데 마스바에 베트니게 기와던 기와 이거 말이지 하 너나 담대 기와래서 너나 대사 드리지 고안이요래 디셈디 대시 좀 버려 좀 봐도 변호사다 이면이 보여 까봤던 거만 좀 줘서
And so now when we say that there is no difference between virtue and non-virtue, it means that, so ordinarily, anger, of course, is not virtuous. When this anger, however, ripens, it ripens into the mirror-like wisdom. So the affliction actually becomes wisdom. And then from that perspective, there is no more distinction between virtues and non-virtues. That is within the mind that is uncompounded. There is no distinction between virtues and non-virtues. And that state is innately virtuous. So that is one other way to understand that term here. Also, another way to see it is that Buddha nature itself can never become obscured. So it says, as the brilliant, clear essence of the sun is not obscured by the darkness of 1,000 aeons, so too the luminous essence of mind cannot be dimmed by aeons in samsara.
kapar khore department so kan perna so semti legi basana tene ne songtona lo tora ma bodene ko thora sa to yo mares ti le te pa zone te ko se de ti mo ko dog song ma yore ti sa sanji takbo ji kan ko ma sanji ko ba tak ta thon ta ne rang ke se ko de ro thoa 세상은 뻗어 성공 말이지. 사제사로 세상의 성공, 내 성성을 성하고 똑똑히 좀 해야 되는 저함이 봐도 도지 창소. 들이들라 도지 창들라 고안이 시에게요래 양. 카 많거나 사제 주용이 삼시 돈이 돌아왔다는 거기서는 말하고 그래서. 야서는 고박가봐 토마미가 차 탐시에 떠나고 사지 공파를 야로 그래서 너는 코라 아니랬더니 대충 보절미 베데 너네 장한테 베데 내가 그러세지 답지 나 타파 또 참아 돌아다 거기 소소는 말로 그래서 소면 다적되고 야야르지 이렇게 거기 박차가봐도 박차들도 사지 공파를 야로 그래 너는 코 돌아도 좀 베베라더니 그저 끝나지 꿈을 들어서 들고 아마고 이래지.
So this mind, that the clear essence of the mind that cannot be obscured by the darkness of 1,000 aeons. So another way to understand that is when sentient beings accumulate negative karma, then they take birth in the lower realms. But even if you spend thousands of years in the lower realms, the Buddha nature never becomes spoiled. It never gets any worse. And when that karma is exhausted, then Buddha nature still is here as it is, and it hasn't changed at all. And then also later, when you attain enlightenment, when you go to the Pure Lands, when you see the nature of the mind, nothing has changed. It hasn't gotten any better at all, even in the slightest. It's still the same. So its nature is unchanging. That is why it is referred to as Vajradhara. Then there's also two ways of understanding that Vajradhara nature, and that is one. And another one is that, so there is, Vajradhara goes one of two ways. When he goes down, then he goes down and destroys all the qualities of the Buddha and the Dharma, and becomes wasted and goes to take birth in the three lower realms. And then when it goes up, when all these karmas come to an end, when those imprints become purified, then when they become destroyed, then he goes up again and takes birth in the Pure Lands or attains enlightenment. And still he has remained the same. That's why it is Vajradhara, always unchanging, beyond birth and death, always remaining the same. So temporarily, that's the sentient beings who waste and spoil all their opportunity for liberation, and they always go and take birth in the three lower realms. But they still have Buddha nature, and so in the end, when those imprints are purified, they go up again. So it is really their Buddha nature, their Vajradhara nature, that always remains, and that never changes at all. And then, though you may say that space is empty, space itself cannot be expressed in this way. Likewise, though you may say that the nature of mind is luminous, there is no basis for labeling it through any such expression. So we mentioned before, the nature of mind is inexpressible. Because if we were to put it into words, we either have to speak of it in affirming or negating terms. So either it exists or it doesn't exist. But it is neither. It is neither existence nor non-existence. And still, it is something that can be seen, the nature of the mind. But it cannot be explained, it cannot be told. So it is inexpressible in being beyond words and thoughts. So it is like the sky. So how is it like the sky? When you look into the sky and you say there is the sky, it exists, then again you can't show any existing sky, there's just emptiness. But then also you can't say that there isn't any sky, because without space, no one could move anywhere. There would be no space to move. So there must be space. So we can't say that there is no space. And so when you know that and look at the nature of your mind, then it becomes even more clear. So it cannot be said to be existing because it is like space. And neither can it said to be non-existing because it is the one who engages in all the activities of samsara and nirvana. So, for example, when you're here in this building, it's filled with people. without thinking about anything at all in terms of existence or non-existence, directly look at your mind without examining anything. Just directly look at the space like clear and empty nature. And that is sufficient, because the moment you begin to analyze it, again you will become confused. And then in space, what depends on what? Likewise, your own mind, Mahamudra, has no supporting ground. So what is the mind supported by? So we all naturally think that the body supports the mind, and we cherish our body very much. But actually, so the karma that we have accumulated in previous lives, for this life, this karma is like the oil of a lamp, and the body is like the fire. So when the karma is exhausted, then as we can always see, the body just turns into a heap of ashes and so on. And then when the body is gone, then is the mind still here? So the mind still exists. A sign of that is our dreams, for example. We engage in all kinds of activities in our dreams. And that is why before we also mentioned we need to understand that there is no difference between the dream state and the waking state in our mind. So the mind is not really does not rely only on the body. In the 37 practices, it says, consciousness, the guest, will cast aside the guest house of the body. So we do care about our mundane activities, but if we understand that, then our attachment to the body will diminish. Because then you know that one day I will have to leave it behind, just like leaving a guest house. And then your mind becomes very light, not so burdened. And then you will not care so much about your body. And of course, you also do not want to abuse your body. You don't want to neglect your body, because you also have a precious human body. It is your support to practice virtue, and also it is obtained as a result of a lot of merit. But then the attachment to the body ceases. And then the mind now is all pervasive. It doesn't rely on the body. For example, there is no place in the body where it is. It pervades everywhere. There is no place where it is not. For example, if you poke yourself anywhere on your body with a needle, then you feel a pain instantly. The mind goes there. It could be anywhere. And not just your body, also the outer world. There is actually no delineation between your body and the outer world. So it is all pervasive. So when you realize that and then meditate, without any outer and inner, the mind becomes very, very light. When there is a strong grasping at a self, an I, the mind becomes solidified. And there is a lot of suffering. The more solid and separate you are, the more suffering, the greater the suffering. And then all kinds of pains and aches and so on arise.
아주 saksinti mes 마기뇽망도 로라쇼 정화 로조 조와 대선메서 마기뇽마지 마기뇽마카리 일단은 그 생코랑 선나과다베데 뇽마들데 요장데 신경 시바사오데 저도요 말이 시바사오데 등 세워 시대로 또 같이 신경 시바사오 된 거예요 거요. 사르차데요. 또 차데요. 그 이용지 누모바 게베게 가르치를 디소르들이 소로고요. 시바사오 되게 소소하고 싫어도 되게 내가들이 좀 제가랑 같이들이 기와담게 신세고 뭐래. 내가 지내들이 되게 나다 소소하고 싫어도 싸워도마 대녀 맞주 용망으로 되셔서 샘맞주 코랑하들이 시바서 온거 시바 드레데지 남도고 왕도 주바서 남도 이제 왕도 마셔라 이왕도 마셔라 라왕 대고를 과랑 속속고서 맞주 용망으로 로라셔 녀마저 세디 주시 요말고 나도 뭐 마시고 마고
And then it says, when you relax in an unaltered natural state, the bonds are released and you are undoubtedly freed. So this unaltered natural state, that is the space-like nature of the mind. And natural or innate is that even though it is actually there, it is innate, it is a natural state, we are not aware of it. There is no awareness of it. And so we are really being introduced here to the clarity aspect of our mind, to the clarity that recognizes all the thoughts and the afflictions. The emptiness aspect is always there, but because we lack the clarity, we always become controlled by afflictions. So we lose control and we become controlled by all kinds of thoughts, virtues and non-virtues, and all kinds of afflictions. When awareness is clear, it is called the discriminating wisdom. And on the relative level, that discriminating wisdom is able to discern between virtuous and non-virtuous thoughts. It is aware of karma. So that is the clarity of mind, and that is empty. And then unaltered, so to rest in the unaltered state is to first just recognize clear awareness and then sustain it without following anything that arises, without becoming controlled by your thoughts and afflictions. So it is awareness sustaining itself with stability. So upholding awareness with stability, that is this upholding the unaltered state. And so the natural state is that state that is always there continuously, but we don't recognize it.
직사에 키워서 듣고 있으면 초반에 요래 당한테 듣고 사빌로데 사비 출력들한테 청와대 요요래 이런 우리 공적 관련 청와대 청와대 오라 때나들이 생분대로 권한 것들이 돌이잖아 청와대 내가 저거요래 저들이 비만매가 따들이 공무층을 오늘 제요래 망시들이 체지 사거나 저기 요래도 그러나 대충 비만매가 내게지서 나와봐 다 지는 다 파역나 달래래 그래서 앞이 죽고 보니까 땅같이 타고 서로 타야지까지 탈 것도 타톡 살지고 센데 타고 나디 탈고 사족서 탈고 요래 동남새들이 이딩을 타고 요래 이딩 가야지 따다 남도로 따지 남도 타고 요래 남도 타고 남도 그런 거를 때나 일단 통지들 때는 남도 샤워서 맞이나 일심단도 각함에 발에 지티서 오게 성을 지체에 남도 이시 바다도 시에서 남도 오신이 그 밤에 왔더니 쳐다보랍니다 그러서나 뒤 남도 나는 시합인 거요 남도 그런 시합을 오래 찾고 요래 남도 뒤 초와 뒤지서 나가거든 조용히 심지 시바지를 쳐놔서 그런데 나도 삼지 돌들이 샤를 돌죠. 별들이 적진에서는 들이 나도 오면 백감을 추가를 했어. 그 심지도 자나티에서 나도 샤를 돌때로 거래했어. 들이 나도 샤와서 지진 줄어서 쪽으로 놓고서 쪽으로 다 손대는 저거요래 시민간에 많이 쳐와서 놓고 있어 그래. 너는 생활을 꺼서 그 용띠나 인기요래 너는 장이 또 봐야 또 가샤나티 마딘들이 파데나 그 생활은 너만 봐 사또는 갔다 되고 마피뇽으로 정말 루저 저르지라 세드베 루루베 선남가다는 셈 예매한다고 차라도 루루치고 차오는 너는 샘나 가서 자고에 그네 곰자대서 곰자하면서 맞추고 그래. 그네 곰자고 그랬더니 그냥 먹어도 되고 그래서
And so it says here the bonds are released. And so these bonds, the bondage is that whether it is now in a context of Dharma practice or in our daily life, in the worldly traditions, we always have an aspiration to accomplish some very important activity. And then there is this feeling, I really want to do this, I want to accomplish this in a worldly sense now. And that grasping also arises in the Dharma practice, this bond. When we meditate, for example, this wish to meditate and to attain liberation is present. But then when you look at the nature of whatever bondage there is in your mind, and just let the mind settle in its natural state, then this bondage will naturally dissolve on its own. So as I already mentioned before, now we have already realized that these worldly concerns that bind us are useless, the useless cause of suffering. So for the most part, we spend our life in worldly activities and preoccupied with hope and fear regarding those activities. And so we already have realized that this is pointless, so we don't follow all of these hopes and fears any longer, and we already have resolved that all outcome is determined by karma, so we let go of all thinking. And so now we come to the actual practice, and the wish that arises is, I want to attain liberation. And what that really actually means is the mind must attain enlightenment, and that means the mind must become free from self-grasping. Through cultivating bodhicitta, we must be able to free ourselves of dualistic grasping. And to do that, we must free ourselves from those thoughts. So when the thoughts arise, you should look at its essence directly and see the essence of that thought without thinking, without grasping at it, becoming controlled by it. And by looking at the thought directly, you realize that actually there is no separation between the mind and the thought. Lord Jigten Sumgön had also said, I have now realized that the ongoing, continuous stream of thoughts are actually primordial awareness, wisdom. So when you recognize the actual nature of your thoughts, then they will not cause any harm any longer. They will self-liberate, just like waves on the water. So whatever thought arises, they then arise within a state of awareness. And then they themselves become the nature of awareness, of wisdom. And if you follow the thought, the feeling that arises, then again you will become confused. So here, when awareness is held with stability, that there's clear awareness, then thoughts arise, and upon arising, they self-liberate. In the Dzogchen also, it is explained that that is referred to the state, that is the essence of the Dharmakaya. And then the awareness of the thought, this clarity, is the Sambhogakaya. And then the thought manifesting in many ways is the Nirmanakaya. And so actually the Nirmanakaya and Sambhogakaya are a union. And so thoughts are seen as the nature of the three kayas. So therefore, the qualities of the three kayas are already present within our mind. And so you actualize it when you do not grasp at whatever arises in the mind, whether it is a positive or negative thought. You don't grasp, you just remain, sustain awareness without following anything. You only remain within a clear, empty, space-like state. And then remaining in that state, you become released. The mind becomes very relaxed, very released. There is no more sensation of there being any separation between yourself and the outer space. Everything becomes like one. And there is no more grasping, even at meditation. So now we have this wish to meditate, this grasping, but when you later actually meditate, you don't even think about meditation. You're actually resting in a state of non-meditation. And so when you're in meditation, then you should release the mind in a relaxed state. And then when you go out about your day-to-day activities, then you should focus the mind without distraction and recognize all the thoughts that arise. So in meditation, you release the mind, and in your day-to-day life, outside, you focus the mind.
Om Mani Padme Hum, 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 Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum, 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 Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum Shri. We found a set of house keys out on the parking lot. If anybody's not able to get home. Living in there's no car key on here, so they must be living in their car. Okay. We'll have them here.
So we said the bonds are released. So the ultimate thing that actually binds us, keeps us in bondage, is this concept of an I. For example, there's a cup of tea, it's my cup of tea. And we always think in this way, we don't even notice it. Everything is mine, it is mine. And so everything that belongs to us, we think belongs to our side, then we think it is mine. And then everything that is not mine is the other. And then I want all of that. So that's why I get angry at others and I get jealous. So you grasp at a duality. And then when you give rise to an altruistic mind, then you just think about others, then that I suddenly disappears. So this altruistic mind is really so precious, and instantly it makes the I go away. So the bodhicitta releases this bond of self-grasping on the relative level. And when you now meditate in a state of Mahamudra and you recognize the nature of mind, you realize that this is a very peaceful state. Why is it so peaceful? It is because also compassion, at least some compassion has arisen in my mind. That's why I feel happy. So you experience the space-like nature of the mind. And then, so first you hear that you should see the nature of the mind like space, you realize it, and then you actually gain the experience of your own space-like nature. And then it is important, once you had that you also always remember these space-like qualities, and especially you have to apply that during your day-to-day activities.
Nam Kara, wrong me bad. Lani Sotiman, somebody so. I'm chilly to some sherry or it. Oh, said that some about it was simple, really Jiboja, Germany, little listen good. Do you manjura now and your songs, Miss Shissivati? Do you enjoy your mercy? Chance out no one, changing now and that, somehow my share. They were now at Jiboja, Germany. Simple sound enjoy your mercy. The same corner part, or throw on me, but not quite younger. Oh, same corner, really chasing with Doctor Challenging Lang, maybe challenging Lang, lailing Lang, that young lady to the city. Oh, same now corner is telling you with less and really teach her sharing with those. The Bakcha sharing with the harsh corner, it is a Bakcha, Bakcha and Musan, don't say sharing with Maramuni and Jung to say sharing with it. You must say it, don't get so silly, chivalry. They have that's a Bakshati. That's a thing you can't know. The Barmadas, some Nakana get it, double jump. Must you my jet and Napotalipa, Yagan and Asa, Michel Dory. The Bakshas roll on my Tikon, the Bakshati, oh, not what is Sona, they been made up at a second visit. Not what the Yagan, the Bakayam, some Harkona. The doctor shocked you up, and nature not what the symbols of Pinto never half or levies and Nangori, Madam Park, Kamichabo, the Payo, that is it. I get the Rubalas of what they come out one dinner. The Kangi would just the same as on them. Pina, don't talk, I pay the money. They ate of it, the corner said the Nakana get it, Nakara talk with Bakani, Karisma, or yeah, the younger me, but oh, so. They were young, but the main one double the gay or Gilom, Kaichung, Jones, they are Kangashadam, they said there are so there are Nakara talk me about Nakara Zami, Dotton, Shont over, they took some Shont over. They somebody Nakim did it or Nakata, God. They come at the typical power. Dr. Titum, not all chargers, they ran instead of charge or Nadina, they now know that they won't go in a period.
So first we recognize the space-like nature of the mind that is beyond coming and going. That is also said in the beginning of the 37 practices. So the mind is that never comes and never goes. And so now all of us, our greatest fear is that of death. But actually, from the perspective of mind, this life and future lives, it's actually all the same. we are only really changing our body. It is said that it is not the times that change, but what changes is the appearances that manifest. So actually, the mind never changes. It is only that the appearance changes. So the old appearance fades, and then in the bardo, the new appearance, the new life has not yet arisen. And this whole time, the mind has always remained the same, unchanging, like the sky. It is actually never born, and it never dies. And when you realize that, there is no more fear of death. There is only fear of karma. So even though the nature of mind is like the sky, if you engage in negative action, if you accumulate karma with an afflicted mind, then the imprint created by that will become reflected back to you as your experience, your appearance. And then what is reflected, that imprint that arises, then we believe in its actual reality, its separate existence. And then later, when these imprints appear in the bardo, then the fear experienced is a real experience. Just like in a dream, when you have a nightmare, you experience it until you wake up from it. But at that time, the feeling is even more intense. So that is why we now train our mind that the daytime or the waking, our whole life, the waking state does not inherently exist. And so then whatever arises, whatever thought arises, don't hold on to it, just let it be, and it will dissolve on its own. And in that case, you are not forming greater habitual imprints. This is how you purify them. So when you meditate, and then you're not holding on to the thought, it just goes. But if you hold on to the thought, then it is like becoming like burned, and the feeling arises. So you just let it be, and just think that it doesn't affect me in any way, no matter what is the difficulty. Sometimes a very strong emotion arises, there's a big problem that arises. But then if there would be any benefit in grasping and thinking about it, then it would be fine to follow it, but there is no benefit at all. Everything follows the law of karma. So therefore, knowing that, you will just be able to let go anything, even a big problem. You just don't think about it, and rather you think about Tara and you meditate. So even though the difficulty is a real difficulty, a real problem, there is no need to hold on to it, because there is no benefit. And then if you just sustain a space-like state of mind, within that state of mind, within the mind itself, there is no difficulty. The mind is unobstructed and unmoving, like the sky. Nothing can affect the mind, no matter what arises. And so realizing that, you will not see anything as a problem. Whatever it is, you will just feel that anything arises in this world as happiness and suffering, and it comes and it goes. And in that way, you will be able to sustain your inner strength and not grasp. It is only when you begin to grasp that difficulties really arise. So you just sustain this space-like, unobstructed nature of the mind, and anything, actually anything can fit within the space. Anything can be embraced by space, happiness and suffering, good and bad, and so on. Within space, it makes no difference to space. It always remains unaffected by anything. So therefore, when you encounter difficulty, don't begin to analyze it or think about it, just let it be naturally, and it will go away on its own. So that is the experience that you should gain. And then once you gain the experience, you must habituate it, and then the practice will really become fruitful.
큐는 말이 되는 말이 매스 큐 탐지선들은 곤대지래요. 곤대지. 야치와 당만 코와르는 도와도 쪽에 등서 통치지 좀 맞았던 도요래. 야타고 산지생 무슨 통구요 말이지. 다다 롱다를 빨았더니 삼세계 냥성은 하고 요래 오 사초세고 이런데 자자자에서 거다시 감 하고 요래 제가 혼대니 혼대니데 대름 맞이 위들라고 생고 내놓게 하고 그랬더니 셈이 이제세 다들 쳤다만 이제 지발에 될 뉴도 상하거나 들이다 하고 요래 배나 고아들은 무슨 쳤다마디 무슨 통고 요래 시작해 요래 갈아서 요래 살도는 거 찾아들 마마마도 요래 이거는 살도는 찾세 쪽과디 좀 털쳐서 살도 각하도 조금 초코랑 뭐랑 이는 따라들이 저 요미라 해요 말이 문제들이 저 도서를 가서 처음에 오 대당서 배도도 나 요리 대회상 한 것들이 용왕나들 라리 요바가 따와도 찍어 차대 요데나 동아요만 메들은 무슨 배도 동아요 세명 됐다고 차대 요리 대응 코디 이제 세면 뒤도 서 하고 나더니 그런 말이 세르마디 배 드리테 다치냐서는 리사와 영통도 따와도 마가다 루바마 작찬다 일만 sel라데 줄었어요. 때로가 예수 보니 다 줄래. 루그사와 함께서 뉴보시다 뭐도 내가 맞이라지래. 다 내가 맞이라지래서 같이 보면 마가나 둘라 뉴보가요 뭐도 라는 얘기지선 가리온 걸 대고 요리도 파사도 요요 말이지. 일만 sel라데 줄었지. 라다들 다 채고래. 다 줄까요? 당 코디 니가 생기 세들한 거 생고 다다나 내로 사토남 갔다가 나포 탐졌다 때다 또 우리 집발에 다 주나 따다와 다 주고 그래 다왜 다 주고 다왜 다 맞추는 고병왕 종지 매승고 요래 속에서 리서 다 주고 다왜 다 주고 그래
And then it says, thus, the nature of mind is like space. There is no phenomenon not included in it. So all phenomena of samsara and nirvana are included within the mind. Samsara is very vast. There are the 6 realms of samsara, of which we can see the animals and the humans, for example. And then there is the pure lands, the Buddha fields that we also cannot see. But then according to the scriptures and reasoning, it is said that if you, through practice, you will understand their nature. It is because you understand the quality of bodhicitta, then naturally you can understand the quality of the pure lands and the Buddha emanations. So you realize here, as you meditate, that mind is the basis for all of samsara and nirvana. So when you realize the nature of mind, you see the mind, this basis of mind is like water, like pure water. And within that, everything is included. If you understand that, you have understood the essence. For example, pure water is something that we drink, or we wash ourselves, or we prepare food with it, and so on. And then there's impure water, like the toilet water. And even though it is undefiled, still, when you look at its essence, it is water. But when you look at the essence of water, even, we cannot even speak of water as something that either exists or doesn't exist. Because when you really look closely at water, then again you cannot find it, but you can use it. So according to the Vajrayana, the secret mantra view, for this reason, the 5 elements are the deity. So that is because the elements are there, but we cannot say that they are here because, again, they cannot be found or grasped. They are insubstantial. But also we cannot say that they are not here because we are using them. So this is the meaning of there is no phenomenon not included in that. And then the next verse explains that from a practical perspective. How do we put that into practice? Abandon all physical activities and rest at ease. Be silent and let speech be like an echo. Without a thought in your mind, look at the definitive truth beyond. So with body, speech, and mind, we engage in practice. So with the body, and says abandon physical activities. So it is to recognize that various physical activities do not have so much essence. It is better to minimize them. And then, of course, we have no choice, but we have to do some things. There are activities that we have to do, but we should not regard them as so important in our mind. And then with the speech is like an echo. Speech also has no essence. Whatever we try to do with our speech, everything will still follow karma, and we will not always accomplish things the way we wish. And then the mind, without a thought in your mind, look at the definitive truth beyond. So this definitive here is that you have to resolve with a certainty the nature of the mind. So what you're resolving here, what you're deciding upon, is that the mind is the basis of samsara and nirvana. And the essence of this mind is clear and empty like space. And that mind that is free of all concepts, that is the same mind of all beings, that is the view. And first of all, that is important to realize, because it is said that unless you have resolved with decisiveness this view, it will be difficult to sustain meditation or habituation of that view.
안 가게 오 다른 쪽으로 도고 살아서 대 말에 들이 저도 사와서 그 사족 세번만 도고래 조반제 뒤서고 송 세너세 제 탑인데 탑강에 탑인지 좀 sem기다 약합다 sem기서를 피고 살을 놓지 요리 정도 다른 게 가라도 지나들이 제 피발이 저러고 요래 스스로 참하고 요래 좀 sem조치고 심다디디 파세 거 인fin으로 다디세로 요래 사와조치고 말이 sem조치고 해서 뭐면서 스트리 sem조치고 해서 가다 박아서 원신 총고고서 모든 말이 시바 총고를 세부들이 인fin으로 해서 말하잖아. 들리는 거 싸워 함께 리와리도 대시했다. 인fin 상반다바지 이 거죠 박감이 들을 좋을 때 이렇게 찾진서 주고죠. 주도 조랑 건 통통을 했더니 우리 양미 제박감이 또 사과같이 며칠간 같이 오지 세부대로 통치되다. 이때 통고 된 통할 수 있바라들이 세부대냐데 사바다 니기지 세메바 세부 돈이도 니기에서 대우고 사들이 생각다 소진 공주 공대비 사바다 니기지 주마체바 대대 니기지 시작이 되었지 뭐 대답을 제르더니 사바다마다 있고 나디도 오고 요래 그래서 사바다마다 제발에 봐용고 요래.
And so also what this is to say is that the outer activities of a body and speech are really secondary, but what's important is the mind. So when it comes to meditation, it says abandon all activities. You take whatever time you have to meditate. For example, even if you just have 10 minutes or just a couple of minutes, or if you want to do a short retreat for just a week, for example, you use whatever time you have to practice. And this is how you implement the practice in your day-to-day life. Because some people think that they take this to mean that now I have to isolate myself to like a mountain retreat. But that doesn't mean that, because actually whatever we do becomes an activity of practice, becomes practice if bodhicitta is at the basis. And Jigten Somgyön had said that this is the skillful means for anything that you do, for all things that you do, to become virtuous. So the skillful means is that altruistic intention, that you, for example, have this wish to bring benefit to the world and all sentient beings. And if you have that wish, even eating becomes beneficial, because, for example, there is hundreds and thousands of bacteria and life forms in your body which then benefit. So most important is the mind. The mind must become liberated, and it becomes liberated through altruism. Altruism destroys self-grasping. So the outer activities of body and speech are secondary to the mind. In the old Kadamba tradition, it was said that you should have lesser grasping at a concrete or reality, at the truth of appearances and your ideas about their characteristics, and you should never separate from altruism. And if you never separate from altruism, everything you do with body and speech becomes virtuous. So whenever you engage in your day-to-day activities, never separate from altruism, and then whatever time you do have to meditate, take that time and practice. Go to a retreat place for some time, depending on the conditions of your life. But what's most important is to apply the practice continuously to your day-to-day life, even just for a short time you meditate. And what is important to always keep in mind is that there's one important purpose to be accomplished in this life, and that is to realize the nature of the mind. And for that sake, we engage in practice. When you cultivate love and compassion, and it always is in your mind, as a result, you will naturally realize emptiness or the nature of mind. And so whenever you have time, look at your mind and meditate. And if you do not have the time, just always make sure you sustain this ongoing state of love and compassion. Because when compassion is always in your mind, compassion is connected to the arising of wisdom. And when that arises, self-grasping will disappear. So the outer activities are not that important. What's important is really the mind.
人类行不明白，就懂着，才能当回家这上月的，平安当家没把路了小，是不是这说明了啥轻松？这个呢，他人类行不懂我那我嘞，这个是就别有的，然后要嘛嘞，中考着我呀，用嘛懂我着我嘞，什么这打没的，错了是你嘛他把嘞，这听了他这讲这就没什么人，一个能看懂我都强了。 听了这里，当家没办法说，当真的希望上我这个，把我要当没有，要不怎么当要当过的错家嘛，让错家那个嘛当那个嘛，对了，什么怎么说？人把一个我说，对我就是上去种地的，生活中路，不往个家里边呀的，没这个，到你公路那的身体。 我讲了看的，甚至政府人把结果来说，这里khó过嘛说，哦，像个帮当些，我不往干别去吧，哦呀，不往个咋的，还叫日巴的送一辈子，买了马拉说，还叫日巴的送马拉说，这里什么这里政府人把这针呢，是把等于针，这个呢生活那个通过路的这什么这，他还叫这里的。 是说到会想的，政府人把这些我的，这个呢，当家没把路来说送的，做那么个那这里中国的，我们就不搞这些路，做这里真是把这市场我这，什么路的，绿的场我这呢，这个说到我们这里品牌有的，这个说让那个这里打看这些我的。
And then it says, the body has no essence, just like a hollow bamboo reed. Mind, like open space, transcends the world of thought. Release your mind within that state, neither restraining it nor allowing it to wander. Mind without a focal point is Mahamudra. So the body has no essence. Of course, we cherish our bodies the most, but we have to always remember that we have no control over this body. We will leave this body just like a guest house. So it really has no essence, like a hollow bamboo reed. And then the mind, it says, is like open space, transcending the world of thought. So the mind, when we look at the mind, we cannot find a self there, even if we are looking. So we find this state of emptiness that is ungraspable, as an insubstantial state. And then, so that is the mind like open space. And then release the mind within that state, neither restraining it nor allowing it to wander. Allowing it to wander, or releasing the mind here. Releasing the mind is that you do sustain clear awareness, but you do not allow the mind to wander into a state of unmindfulness. But then also you should not try too hard and be too tense. So you should not restrain the mind too much. The Buddha actually taught that when we meditate, there must be a good measure, like a middle way in between too tight and too loose. Now, once the Buddha was giving instruction to a disciple on how to meditate, and the person he was giving this teaching to didn't really understand when the Buddha said the mind should not be too loose and it shouldn't be too focused. And so because he didn't understand, then the Buddha asked him, do you know how to play like a veena, like a guitar? And he said yes, he knows that very well. So then the Buddha asked him, so can you play that instrument when the strings are very extremely tight? Then he replied, you cannot. And then the Buddha asked him, so if the strings are bound to loose, then will it produce a sound? And again, he negated. And then he said, so what will produce a sound? And so he said, there must be just the right measure in between, too tight and too loose. And so then the Buddha said, this is how it is with the mind. It shouldn't be too tight and not too loose. And then when you actually rest in the nature of mind, then you can release within that state. So you need to practice with awareness, with this discriminating wisdom that finds the right point between too tight and too loose. And generally speaking, in our day-to-day activities, the mind needs to be more restrained or more focused. And when you're meditating, then the mind is a bit more relaxed or released. And now, in general, also for the meditation, the tightness here that we apply in meditation just really comes from straightening your back. So you straighten your back, and at the same time you're releasing your mind into a relaxed state. So that's personally a beneficial way to practice, but we anyways have to practice according to our own experience.
So the dreaming they feel there around you they saw me by chat you see the drug and the button you they do the margin so they saw me the section they look on be la mise en chose la me pas qui va that chanson du Tommy Thomas had a job to the but the Lana me pass. Said Nakata, Tataran so it. Lana me a tongue chip, Lana me a tongue chip divided. Getaldi, don't down with them by the this is what she bought some Chang this may be she so. The bomb job that the sun won't you, so she passed out chatted. Some of them, this is all strong or sucking in Rani, the cemetery, they were so young as it is so gutted the child. There is something in it. Ta Choji Yonga, Tojan Mele, no, just a old song, Rebena, Bayana, the Kobe Params Parnagi, that easily ranked only one better than touch with the true. The drama of the young will tell a movie that needs a motion. Then when they touch her, they'll go to the touch of Wally. Took a touch of my young there. 라나 메바 장첩지 장첩지 받았다 다지 일에서 섬질 없었대 대매가 섬는 님도 없었나 과가들이다 호래 이제 상내 있으면 27척네 님의 bakar dedi işi daha çok öğrenir niye ondan namşirir.
And then by habituating in this, you will attain supreme awakening. Before that, the mind without a focal point. The focal point here is, for example, when you practice shamatha, there's different kind of methods of meditation. For example, there is shamatha with and without characteristics, and with and without support, and so on. And here, however, when we actually look directly at the nature of the mind, there is no such a support. There is no object of focus. So there is no focal point. You just rest naturally, like a lamp flame, just naturally without a focal point. There is no thought that thinks I must do this or that, because grasping thoughts also will distract the mind. So do not be grasp at anything, at any focal point, and just abide within a clear state and sustain that. And that is Mahamudra. And then by habituating this, you will attain supreme awakening. Afterwards it also says you attain unsurpassed awakening. As you mentioned before, this state is inexpressible, beyond words and thoughts. We have said before, when you attain non-attainment, you attain Mahamudra. So supreme or unsurpassed is the space-like nature of the mind. And enlightenment or awakening, or in Tibetan it is Chang Chup, and what that Chang here means to purify. And from the ultimate perspective, what becomes purified is the dualistic grasping. And when that becomes purified, then naturally non-dual primordial awareness arises. So now when you meditate, first there is this clear awareness that is aware I'm meditating. And so sometimes when you sustain such a state, a sudden experience, a feeling of great joy arises. Jigten Sumgön explained that in the co-emergent Mahamudra teachings, that sometimes just naturally a feeling of bliss arises and you feel very joyful, and you just decide, you just know in this moment this is it. Just naturally it arises. So it's nothing that you see, but you experience it naturally and directly. But it is inexpressible. It is just like a deaf or like a mute person eating molasses, not being able to explain its taste. So this is how we need to experience meditation. So through meditation, we resolve the nature of the mind. And so sometimes we see that state naturally, for example, when devotion arises or when strong compassion arises. But it is not something that we can understand through words. It is something that can only be seen through a personal experience, through meditation. And so now Chang Chup, or awakening, Chang now is to clear away, purify self-dualistic grasping, and Chup means to master then, and so what is, or acquire. So what is purified is the dualistic grasping, and actually it is based on an understanding that within the mind there is no duality. Dualistic grasping is cleared away. And as it is cleared away, non-duality naturally arises. And so in the context of duality, we call the mind the consciousness, and when you realize its non-dual nature, then it is the primordial wisdom.
소리를 차고 돼서 똥송조 냠들이 싸르하기 동하기 사 샘들하기 싸르 시바사오디 동쪽을 했지.
So that is the supreme awakening, and then the nature of mind is luminous without any object of reference. So luminous, it is clear. The mind is clear and empty like space. So there is nothing really there, but there is a clear awareness. And those are like one unity there, or together. Awareness and emptiness are one. The nature of clarity is emptiness, and the nature of emptiness is clarity. So by abiding within that state, habituating, you will see this clear awareness or luminosity.
칼라시모도 오시모도 시바사오 하고 갑자기 니 시바데 시바랑랑시나 랑르시데 지혼들랑르시데 랑게 시바사오데 랑랑 하고 별로 마음이 그 주베죠 랑랑로 랑사요레 베나 랑랑사르데 랑랑 하고 하는 게 작동이 이제 마음에 봐 다니지 메바 대도 차용거리 텔레스니 뭐베르미 sem전한지 살소.
And then this luminosity, the nature of mind is luminous. It is also the clarity of just knowing something clearly. Now, for example, just you're eating good food, for example, then you have this awareness that you think that this tastes so good. So there is a clear, you're conscious of the flavor of the food. So that is you clearly know something. And so here in this context, it is the self-knowing awareness. So it is awareness knowing itself. And when you see yourself, then that is what we call luminosity. For example, it is just like a lamp flame that illuminates itself. So we call it the naturally luminous, a self-knowing awareness. And when awareness sees itself, then what is seen is a clear and empty state that is free of the duality of self and other.
रूप लाम में सांझे लमना से सो ता लाम कर बात समझे पे ना ता सब तो तंबू नितनी सो लोटो नाम जो ने तो तेरी सांचो सो भी ती लाम कर बाते ये समझे लाम ने सांझे रूप लाम के बात दी न तेरी तो थों सो ना लाम थमचे दी सारे जो होते ने रूप लाम में सांझे लमना से सांझे रंग थे 로사 람과다 로아다 로사데 가가요 말이지 가랑 사제시 로람 이다요 말이서 맨날 가래 오 상제 대해지 상제 코랑 그래야지 생코랑 상제래야지 내가 딱 톱자에 생상제 생코랑 그 무리해서 하거나 데레데레 파타브서 맞직잖아요 말이지 저 토자가 사지가 용진 상제가 코랑의 요래 너지 바람 그 용진 상제 너지 바람의 요래서 그래서 생코랑을 아시지 하고 생코랑을 사제 용진 요래서 루벨람이 사제를 나세서.
And then without a path to dread, you enter the path of the Buddhas. So there's different levels of the path in general. So first we begin with the 4 thoughts that turn the mind, and then we cultivate bodhicitta. So we walk through the gradual path. But what this is saying is that when you see this nature, then this seeing completes all the paths at the same time. Because then when you see the nature of the mind, then you realize that the path you're going to and the one who goes and where you're going to, all is actually one. It is the mind, it is the Buddha. And that itself, in that very moment, is awakening. And there is no other Buddha than that, than your own mind. It is said that the nature of mind, that is the Buddha, is there is no impurity to remove from it, and there is no quality to add to it. So when you only clearly know the nature of mind, then there is actually never any fault, any stain that need to be purified from it, and there is actually also no enlightened quality to add to it, to attain. The mind is just like a diamond, for example. The brilliance of a diamond is already there. It is a quality of the diamond. And so when you realize the nature of mind, then you realize that the qualities of the Buddha are the qualities of your own mind.
곰미 곰배 라미 산속토 딱 강양 보고 세고 내려지고 썼던 거는 내 야왜 라는 게 상처서 일단이 니스메베 이시 탑고요 장처.
When you habituate non-meditation, you will attain unsurpassed awakening. So non-meditation is to just look at the essence of your mind and remain within that. And as a result, you attain unsurpassed awakening. You attain you realize the non-dual primordial awareness.
뭐 어디서 강에 지정아 그거는 다들 옛날 만남 때리 세상 드라마가 들려다 보실 때 이거 요럴 때 탐지 답보자 파야잖아 들이 식도요래 들이게 지속고 송대는 걸 지침 남도리 시험 받아도 시송 시라면 어찌해나 이렇게 소소했더라 남도게 내가 가리나 대통령 잡으려야 하면 파야야 대답을 야원에 이 독식을 특축식을 무슨 집중을 이제 파야야는 이 쳐다보는 일로를
And then so the reason why we need to practice meditation, habituate for such a long time, is because we have a lot of doubts in the mind. We always wonder, is it this or is it not? And that is because of our habitual patterns and karmas. So whatever arises, just let it be and do not hold on to it, and it will naturally disappear on its own. Chikden Sumgen had said, like we said before, I have now recognized that the continuous stream of thoughts are actually primordial wisdom. So, when thoughts arise, no matter what arises, do not become involved in those thoughts, wondering what is it, and is it this or is it not. Do not follow any of your doubts, and just let it be, whatever arises. In the Dzogchen, it is referred to, this practice is called the Chekchu, which means direct cut. So whatever arises, you let it be directly as it arises, and just like a wave on water, it will subside on its own.
가야마게 바테카테카스리 조라테 따비가 보여레지 누나 당호 인지메 있을 때를 민카와 강요나 오 대통교리 참아서고요리 나 대코리 소리 강미데 시험 시발때 무보리서는 세로 초와를 내가요 대요 말이 그런데 맞들 진짜면 안하기 직대를 참아서고요 요리 다양 때나이 그 가리는 고요리 내가 답시요리 다들 초와되고 생기더니 semble d'attuo ma debata pare per che già ni vuole sia o delle ciabatta ma ni vuole sia che tamara soba o come io vuole to guarda trova 다 됐다 시에서 책만 고 차로 그래 돈나 semchopo 차고래 sem 강에 오로지마 대도 좋아. 내독이야. 체매봐. 저도들은 말하는 배에서 책도 기치버리. 기독니가 체매를 담아놓도 저봐야 샘 떡을 집어내지. 내 능이가 누밤이야 장어들이. 능이는 어느 팽그렇지. 능이 기독이가 제밤이라 장어를. 샘 남고 용어들이 되는 대량주와 제보요리 때문에 정디건데 답이 잡고이 디셈데 답을 내는들이 영화미 받고 잡고이 소데 다som디 당사를 셈데 사정을 열라 나도 봤어요. 데partment이나 디셈데 영화면들이 너도 탐지 이실이죠. 뭐 이실이죠.经조사 차성 들이 맞을 강의미가 남심을 강의미가 요구요래.
Then it says, transcending dualistic perceptions of subject and object is the king of views. Whatever arises, now there is this perception of the outer object appearing, and then the inner mind that perceives them. Now whatever thought of hope or fear or doubt and so on arises, do not follow it. So that is transcending dualistic perceptions of subject and object. Do not follow it, but directly let them become liberated without grasping. That is the king of views. So the king of views is not to grasp at a duality. For example, when you hold this view and you sit here in this room filled with people, you do see the people and you know what is going on. But there is no dualistic grasping, so you don't begin to conceptualize that's that person and here's that person. So you don't begin to grasp at whatever appears. So there is no feeling of that is all real, there is something real happening. You just are aware that there are those people without thinking about it at all. So you see it, but then when you close your eyes, it almost, all of a sudden, it appears as though nobody is there, everyone is gone. And then you open your eyes, and then you see everyone, like all at once, without a specific focus. And then the same is true for sound. You hear what people say. You also respond, you can answer. But then there is no grasping. Whatever sound is heard does not trigger any kind of feeling in you. And so the mind does not become obscured. Normally when we hear nice words, we become attached to it. And when we hear unpleasant words, we dislike it. So they trigger a feeling in us. So in brief, it is what happens is when the feeling is, all kinds of feelings are triggered, the mind becomes very solid and hardened. So what we need to practice, no matter what arises here, which is the king of views, is an equal taste, no matter what arises. Milarepa gave a very important instruction here. He said that when you realize that there is no difference between happiness and suffering, then you have actualized the instruction. So actually then you're always happy, because when there is no more difference, then no suffering can affect you negatively. So then no matter what difficulty arises, it actually becomes beneficial and it really makes no difference. It all becomes the same. And that teaching is actually also related to his other quote, Milarepa's other quote, where the mind and space are the same. So that's the king of views, and then remaining without distraction is the king of meditations. So then you rest within the natural state of the mind. You have recognized the view, and then you sustain the view without distraction. So the view is first that you do not grasp at a subject-object duality. You do not grasp at the outer perceived object or the inner perceiving mind as true or untrue. There's no grasping. And then you just sustain that state without distraction. And in that way, afflictions become wisdom, or negative circumstances appear as supportive, actually, like support and enhancement to your practice. And so to such a person, then, nothing creates any difficulty in the mind.
네 너네 영화에 봐도 기체보래. 그래서 남네 신이 that's 치료래. 이래 영화네. 영화 감라 되지 잡아요서 말이야. 예ም디나 배나 영화까지 나와냐 봐대요. 나와냐 봐대요나. 뒤값이 저 라서 뭐 차당 또 받지래. 오 아유도 받지래. 진짜 레사 거요래. 이모 식부터 받자 거요래. 배나 밥에 밥이 저 똑같이 나오나. 라사 컨트롤한 거라. 되게 오 봐요 bak감이 되거나 되게 이제 저시에 이것을 로마카시고 좋아하지 않아요. 다음 컨트롤하나 빈줄 조지 봐라. 소방관 저거로 나 컨트롤하고도 가 컨트롤처럼 말아와 이제 저거 컨트롤 저거 소방관 저거 되지만 되는 것도 기시티네 영업감이 될때 영업이 많이 먹는 영업왕 것이 똑똑하게 레서 먹는 많이 가르쳐 버려 영화미 막 기쳐 버려 대위 영화 매를 거부 잡고 이제 많이 이제더니 나도라 주바 영화 말에 많이 다 가려 빼라 컨트롤을 하고 도마니 컨트롤을 쳐야지 시드네 또 컨트롤이지 하 컨트롤 다시 많이 왔다 되지 여기 때문에 그 말아 즉시 그 뭐를 요구해서 다 영문데 다 여기에 다들 거랑지 요래 다들 내병 그랬더니 도시가나 했더니 좋아요 요래 영만이 이제 다 용이 제발해 많이 먹어도 다 용말에 서울에 다지니가 넘어졌더니 나오는 수박공 토크요래.
And so here, the king of meditations is to remain without distraction, and that's really actually most important. And now for us as practitioners, we understand that, to some extent, we practice that, and we are not always able to sustain that. So it is really the state of non-distraction that prevents the evil, the evil of negativity to enter our mind. When we become distracted, in a distracted state, there's always this notion of an I. It always remains. And because of that, we always develop thoughts of attachment and aversion towards the sense objects. And that all arises due to self-grasping. And then we accumulate karma. And that is why we are not able to let go of the afflictive emotions when they arise. When we are unmindful and someone, for example, insults us, instantly we get angry. If you're mindful, then you will actually use it as a way to take a negative condition as practice. So people sometimes ask a question. Someone asked about practicing patience with the companion when they trigger your anger. So they make me angry, but then so I tell them to practice patience. And so then to them maybe it appears that the other person is getting angry. So then I'm trying to be patient. So I'm telling him, like, stop talking because I'm getting angry. And then often that naturally doesn't really make the other person not be angry. But what we need to focus on is not what the other person says and how he triggers our anger, but that when the anger arises, you must on your part practice patience, and you do that when you sustain mindfulness. When you're unmindful, when you're distracted, and you don't recognize that. So therefore, especially for beginning practitioners, it is like this state of non-distraction is really most important, and that is why it is the king of meditations. Because for as long as you're not distracted, at least completely ordinary, unrestrained thoughts will not arise. And even if you get angry, you instantly recognize the anger, and you will not act out on the anger. So that is a sign that you are not distracted. If you are distracted, then the anger arises, and then you get anger and get angry at the other person, and then you start fighting, and then you keep blaming each other, and then it's like you did it, no, you did it, and in the end, it is like it's almost like you're throwing rocks at each other, and you just start arguing, and there is like no resolution to that. So when there is, in other words also, when there is distraction, there is always a self. And when there is no distraction, then there will be no self. So that's the difference. And understanding that difference will help us to be able to practice patience. And then making no deliberate effort is the king of conduct. And that is, whatever you do, whether it's Dharma practice or worldly activity, you engage in the activity without much hope and fear. And you just think that whatever happens, it will be okay. Whatever happens is karma. There is not so much ambition. So of course you do things, but if things don't turn out the way you wished, it is also fine. There is no hope and no fear about the accomplishment. Whatever happens, it is fine. But of course it doesn't mean that you are not doing things. So then what happens is that self-grasping dissolves. And so when there's not much hope and fear, self-grasping dissolves. And together with that, the attachment to this life, these worldly affairs also dissolves. And that is because you realize that it has no real essence. And then you are released from self-grasping and you only think about others. So then the effort becomes, like the action becomes effortless. Also, the reason why this term king is used here again and again is a king here in this context represents the benefit of others. Like a king must care for his subjects, for his kingdom. So here it doesn't mean that like a king is like oneself, you only care about yourself because you're the king, but it means here, king here means, it refers to the acting for the benefit of others.
사지 공방다 생활 내록들이 사지 하고 전에 내가 자고 지어 말들에 이는 시비사 받은 게 체외 범마도 이다 요 말이 들이 또 고사 코바가 동해를 또 고요 또 참아 동해를 또 고요래 코바 주마다 하고 돈은 코바 맞을까 쉽지 탐지를 사지가 좀 보여마 내가 처음 또 하고 전에 이제도 치고 내가
And then having neither hope nor fear is to realize the fruition. And so in general, our greatest hope and fear now relates to this life, but now here also in this context, it is in an ultimate sense that it is our greatest hope to attain the state of enlightenment. And basically, it is really our hope to achieve happiness, to be happy. But actually, what we call this attaining the state of enlightenment, this state of enlightenment is the nature of your mind. And when you understand only that, then naturally there will be no more hopes and fears. And then all there is just a state of boundless love and compassion for sentient beings. And then realizing just that, you see that although there is much suffering in samsara and all sentient beings do not actually exist. They appear just like dreams. The essence of all beings is really the Buddha, and only temporarily they are like blocks of ice. So if you realize that, there will be no more hope and fear. And so there is no hope and fear because there's no more dualistic grasping. For as long as there is dualistic grasping, there is hope and fear. But here at this point, there is no more dualistic grasping, and so therefore one has already embarked on the path, the unsurpassed path of awakening. So when one sees non-duality, non-dual primordial wisdom, just naturally all hopes and fears will disappear. And then the unborn ground of all is freed from the obscuring veils of karmic imprints. And so Buddha nature, as we mentioned before, from Buddha nature there is no fault to be, or no stain to be removed or purified. There is no enlightened quality to be attained, to attain. These habitual imprints of self-grasping and dualistic grasping are only temporary veils, but the actual nature of mind is the Buddha. And so then it says, rest in the unborn essence without discriminating between meditation and post-meditation. So that is, now in the beginning, as beginning practitioners, there is a difference between meditation and post-meditation. And so here then when you rest, you always rest within a state of the view, then just naturally all thoughts that arise are naturally liberated. And then naturally this view is merged with your day-to-day conduct, which is the post-meditation. So in the beginning there is a difference. There is the meditation and the post-meditation. And then we need to gradually train to bring the experience gained in meditation into post-meditation. And mainly we do that by sustaining a state of non-distraction. And then eventually you are always in a state of non-distraction. So you're always sustaining that state. And then in the end, there is no more difference between meditation and post-meditation. And that is because there is an ongoing state of non-distraction. So right now there is a difference, but then there is no more difference when there is no more distraction. And so again, this line actually refers to the verse above. Actually, it has the same meaning. The king of meditation is to sustain non-distraction.
당보 진진고보다 치면지 봐. 색노래데 뭐 직당도 없이. 다만 매가자고 차도 요래. 이거는 매가야 말이야. 사버랑지 빼나 랑이 양이 맞을 좀 납도가 레사는 처로나 레사지 레지 내가 잡아서 미고 요래. 마디바야 말이야. 대바야 말이야. 너 세부 가야 맞지. 대바야 맞지. 마디바야. 마디바야 맞지바. 저거 탐지 세용나들이 there
and then when you recognize appearances as self-projections, the phenomena produced by the conceptual mind come to an end. And so this conceptual mind here, that is now here even the most subtle grasping at any truth. So there's no more thought of thinking out like it's this or it's that or that is real, that's really how it is or that's not how it is. There is no grasping at that because nothing that appears is real, and also it is not that it's not there. So it is neither true nor untrue. It is almost like when there is no grasping, it is almost like there is nothing really there, nothing is really happening. But it's also not that there is nothing, because there is also clear appearance. And so for those who don't practice, they will accumulate karma, becoming confused, and then temporarily, like an illusion, that karma will ripen as their projections. And these projections also are not true, but also not untrue. So here the instruction basically is of the conceptual mind coming to an end, means that don't grasp at anything. Do not even grasp at things to be not true. So at this point, all of these fixations come to an end.
다 용으로 따위 잡고 줘서 이들다 따와다마다지 마고요래 됐다 딱체를 열라서가 마고요래다나 따로 섭자다 쪼성거리 내가 대타게 처내가 딱체니 다다도요래 딱체니 오카시 그 딱발이 세물이 오카시는 시작지 답지 똥반이 직접 맞아 사람들이 딱발에서는 고대처럼 이제 작성을 또야만 자소 맞다발도 대형 노선 맞다발에서는 샘나도 차를 내서는 유목을 내지 내가 여기 좀 왔다 양철동이 용구요래 저기서 하면 봤어 지시템들 진짜 좋아하는 것같아 용구요래 대들이 돈들이 샘 코를 다시 ጭ버렸어 딱지달라 마음이 멘타세 사르랑지게 멘타세레스 동그랑지게 용타세 사르랑지게 멘타세 딱지로 되봐 딱고 정도 들어봐 뭐또 만나 갔다 제배 정도 들어라지 사르이시 들때 송도적으로 되니까 송조금을 안 송다들들이 책이 조정해 봤대라 그 동네 책이 요래들이 양말을 매라고 해야 돼. 대 많이 받아라는 게 다타타에 타주 손에 대해들이 이 맘타 용도 따위 잡고 줘. 지나 봐서 돼 봤다고 돼. 딱시 인 탈에 돼 봐. 그 공잡거나 생고 공어들거나 뜨글리에서 들변 초바데 관샤야 이러변 동방양 말에 사람들도 되게 사람들이 직접 무덤살이 로테야 말에 어떻게 너무 나빠서 직접 요 말에 지들들이 딱갈 강삼지 토크 말 직접 삼지 많이 봐야들이 제로 주세들이 다시는 대로 되지를 맞지 많이 봐야들이 직접 되던 것 때문에 다사도 나빠다 다시고 내려라 히소라 들리려고 요래 들으니 만사랑 답을 잡고
And then it says, complete release from all extremes is the supreme king of views. So there's all kinds of different views in this world, but all the more than like 300 wrong views in this world are summarized in the eternalistic view and the nihilistic view. And so some who follow an eternalistic view, they think that things are real and they really exist and they're permanent. And then others who are a bit more intelligent, they think that nothing exists, everything is empty. But then when you really actually realize the view, then both are mistaken, because when you think that things really exist, then you cannot find anything existing. All of the phenomena in samsara and nirvana are compounded phenomena, they are impermanent, and there is not the smallest particle even that possesses any true existence on its own. So that view is mistaken. But even though things are impermanent and don't really exist, if we accumulate karma with an afflicted mind, then temporarily, like an illusion, the result of that will manifest, and there will be an actual experience of suffering. Karma is unfailing. And so that is something we need to apply to practice in our own mind. So when you just look at your own mind, the natural state of your mind, that naturally becomes free of those extremes. So it is said that the extreme of eternalism is dispelled through the clarity or the appearance aspect, and the extreme of nihilism, of eternalism is cleared away by the empty aspect, and that of nihilism is cleared away by the clarity aspect. And so in that way, the Buddhist view remains free of all faults. So that is because the nature of mind ultimately is empty, like space, but also clear. And so therefore, it is neither existing nor non-existing. And it is referred to as the middle path, the middle pathway. It is something that cannot be expressed in words, because if we try to express it in words, we either talk of it in an affirming or negating way. It's either this or that. But when you really resolve the nature of mind, that cannot be expressed in words. So it is free from extremes, free from all extremes, even the extreme of verbal expression. So it is just an experience, a feeling that arises of this is it, this is the nature of the mind. There's an experience where you know that it is empty, but it's not just empty, it is also clear, naturally clear. And there is nothing, there is no word that can express it. It cannot be expressed in words. So there is this knowing that naturally arises. And that is what we mean here with also before the exhaustion or coming to an end of the conceptual mind. It is because we try to find something and we keep thinking of it. It's either this or it is that. And ultimately, the mind becomes exhausted. There's nothing to be found. So the intellect becomes exhausted. There is nothing to be found, and then you rest within that state of not finding anything. And that state then becomes naturally like space, like the space, clear and empty. So in that way, from not finding anything, you come to the actual natural state of the mind.
Mami Teng Yang Gobajapo Chos. Mami Teng Kari, oh, that's him Namkata with the Gom dinner. Namkari, Namapater, Nakata Gomchi, so oh, Mami Teng Tokusa Tang. Namkata sent Namkata, she did dinner day, Jana. They didn't Mami Teng Gobajapo Chos.
And then boundless, deep and vast is the supreme king of meditations. So, for example, Milarepa gave an instruction to his disciple Barda Bowman. He said, when you meditate, then let your mind like rest within the space-like nature of the mind abiding like space, without any center or boundary. And then if you always abide within that state, that is the king of meditations.
Sarmirang ne juba Japon chos. There is Saji Sana, Chukanamkata, there is Sajira. Savato Sato Chita Yon Mariano Saji simply don't cheat, but the Ramji with the Chukura longer to go to your money. Sajigo Poteta, Nakata, go to Ritela. Savato Saji simply, Nive, Lepaka, your marriage. God Jabari, take a Ramji, Katang, also later, but Kabis. Shengomara Sosoya take a young Shengomara the Dong take a gom jamna, the gom jamnately, San Milan Redovin, the Gerson Guyori, Saji Compactilla, Trinidad, the gom jelly fumes, Hoteji Ateli, some chapter Guyori, Tevelately, Lekaji on my gom jelly. 탈도나 송을 탈직상티 중쇼는 감성 감은 만남을 소시면에 동체성도 부총도 다 곰대 문이 피우치다요 제보인사래서 리에들이 다 곰대도 가지고 다 진짜 제거를 하게 별게 요말 진짜 제말 때말을 곰대 베테사베들이 심지가 사제 때마다 심지도 자체보 별로 다 됐다 말아레 녀르라 사게도 속신이요 데이터베들이 딱한 계고요 말이 사제도 못 보면 되다가 인기요요.
And then abiding at ease, free from all effort, is the supreme king of conduct. And so free from effort is that when one attains the state of enlightenment, the space-like Dharmakaya, there is no more duality between and something to be accomplished, an activity to be accomplished, and one who engages in the activity. And so this is why the enlightened activities of the Buddhas to benefit sentient beings happen naturally, effortlessly. So we say from the Dharmakaya arises the Sambhogakaya and then the Nirmanakaya. So there is no deliberate intent actually to engage in a certain activity to benefit, and that is because there is no more duality. And the Buddhas have realized there is no duality between all beings, between Buddhas and sentient beings. Because there is no duality, there is also nothing to be done, no activity. There is no one doing anything, and there's nothing that is done. And benefit comes about naturally through meditation. And now, as beginning practitioners, we do make an effort in our practice. We accumulate merit towards those higher beings. We make offerings, and then we also purify our obscurations and so on. But now here in at this stage, there is only an ongoing state of meditation that is free of all activity, hope, and fear. And without hope and fear, the fruition is made manifest naturally. In one text that explains the benefits of meditation, it says that in the context of enlightenment, that mind, that meditative mind, pervades all of samsara and nirvana. And therefore there is no activity to be done, actually. And then in the Great Liberation Sutra, it is said that a single session of meditation, meditative concentration, is of greater benefit than to save the lives of all sentient beings in the three realms of samsara. So I heard that quote when I was very young, and when I heard that quote, I really thought, oh, meditation must be really very beneficial. And so through meditation, all activity, all effort comes to an end. Just like Milarepa, there is nothing to be done physically and verbally any longer. And in that way, like Milarepa, for example, the benefit of sentient beings and the service to the Buddha's teachings really arise naturally and effortlessly. That is also why Milarepa was called the life tree of the Buddha's teachings. It was due to his determination, his courage in practice. So from that perspective of this ongoing state of meditation, there is nothing to be done. Everything arises naturally and effortlessly.
대대 퍼터서 들나가서 대대 퍼터 탑들이 마시바 쏘치고 말이 대대 다다다고 잡나 들이 하자지 마치 버리 소속에 양도 로를 들라 고차야 요래 들이 좋아들이 오라 좋아 같이 보여는 찍히는 산이 소리 톱내양 이렇게 때나 링카치 담아 다시 톱어서 수고하고 말이 들이 다음 비는 산이 요래 저 당시 대부사 쳐버렸다고 하고 양낭 들라마 교신이 당기를 쳤는 양상양도 소장지야 아유레와테레 대외지 대표가래 마고잡 참아네 소들 대대 맡으면 로디고 요말 즉시에 사지 대대 트립으로 돼서 로디고 요래 대대로 잡 참아보 그래 소소모고는 이는 대바지 사실 대고래 사제가 마음도 좋다만은 이 일이 좋은데 사제 거에는 요거 말이야 일이 좀 송요래 이 기침을 기분이 고는 발치고래.
So today I gave an explanation on this book, like a bit like a summary, maybe not so detailed explanation, but still this book is extremely precious, and you have a lot of lamas here, spiritual teachers, that you can ask your questions, and you can ask any of your teachers these questions. So it was just very important for me to be able to offer these books to you. My teachings are really not most important, but that little book is really very important, and you should hold on to it and consider it very precious. And actually, every time you read this little book, your understanding of it actually will deepen more and more. So also I don't know if there will be time for questions on that. If there is any time for questions tomorrow, then maybe we are able to answer a few questions if you write them down, but we will see how it goes tomorrow because we still have to cover part of the book. But anyways, the book is very precious and you should hold on to it, ask your teachers questions. And really the reason for offering you these books is because I really hope that you will continue to practice and study this book in the future. And that is why we made this effort to provide these books to you. And personally, if I wouldn't have anything to offer to you, I would not feel happy. And I feel it becomes fruitful if I'm able to offer something to you. And then these books are very important because they will remain for many hundreds of years. And if you have some extras, you can also pass them on to somebody else who has faith in these teachings. And actually, the Buddha himself had said, before passing into nirvana, he said that in the final 500 years in the future, it is not my body that will appear, but I will appear in the form of the scriptures. So therefore, these scriptures actually are the Buddha himself, and so that is why they are so precious, and you should so keep them and also use them and ask your teachers questions about it. So then we dedicate.
Sunam de dam je ze ba ye to na ni be jana bam ze chi ga na je ba lo do ba ye se be zo do wa re yo jam ba ba ve je da re je ma kin da sam bo de ya de ye de da ge je za da lo Gyan de da dam je ra de ngo san jo sim jo Rinpoche ma je pa na je jo je che ba nyam ba me ba ya kong ne kong de be wa re yo shi za gen ze gen je chi je Ren je bar je ten ba zen de ba je do de zang gong ben zen yo je
kang ri ra ve ko ve shen gang se pe da de wa ma de jong we ne je re se wa de de jam so ye sha re sen de ba de de yo ye
Gong jo ren je som je ngo wo nye jar den zen bai zhe be
Page 160.
Garchen Tong gen zang wo jian je zen ze ba chen den den zhe ga jia xia de yo Gong jo som je ten ban zen ba la Nai ge wan so je zen jam de yang Tep de ren jian zhu men den ze ba Che je na wa ga jia xia de yo Ha be yo na er yan de wa xi Do gam so sen gar je re se zhe Je den gong be to se che den ba Par den gar jen ge se ga jar de Nian de jar de nya zhe ne gam de Ta ta tor je ta ve tor yo je Re me ten pe ko je ta ge ye Ten pe nye ma gar je ya de zo
Everybody sangha thank you. Om mani padme hum.
Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Mani Padme Hum. Om 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 Mani Padme Hum Shri. One quick message. This is the magnificence of the yogi. These teachings have come down through generations and generations and generations of masters to disciples who have become masters. These teachings are so profound and are priceless. And so we should be very thankful to Garchen Rinpoche, thankful to our own karma that we are here today to be able to receive these teachings and so on. So thank you all very much for coming. Tomorrow will be the sad climax of this. You know, this will be the time that Garchen will finish up tomorrow. There'll be a kata offering. What is it? There'll be a kata offering tomorrow. At the end of the day, he'll finish the book and the time for questions and answers, and then there'll be a Lama Chopa. So the Lama Chopa is a practice that we do for Jigdan Sumgun and all the masters who have come and so on. So it'll be for Garchen Rinpoche as well.
Okay, last but not least, you all know that tomorrow is Sunday. It's a church day, the Sunday service day. So we cannot park our car over there to show the respect because that's what they want. So come early. We're trying to squeeze you all in as possible in the back. As well, we're going to have a carpool to send you to there's a right down the block here, the next traffic light. There's a Fairfax Authority, Fairfax Water Authority. There's a government, they open a lot of parking, they have a lot of parking space, they're allowed to park there. So, and otherwise, if you want, you're familiar with this area, you can park, on the Zion Drive across the gas station, as some of you have done that before. So, please do not park the church, so we can use that more often in the future. But come here, if we cannot fit you in here, we drive you to the Fairfax Water Authority, okay? So thank you very much, have a wonderful evening.